6 months ago, I test drove the Toyota Corolla Cross 1.8G for the first time. And at the time, I only spent the better part of maybe 2 hours with it, so I wasn't able to give you, our valued audience, the most meaningful review possible. This time though, I spent about 4 days sampling the 1.8V, and let me tell you this, I really like the Corolla Cross, and I really think you can consider buying it. This review is brought to you by BH Petrol Infinity, the premium fuel that gives you more power and more mileage. In terms of styling alone, the 1.8V already looks so much better than the 1.8G. This guy gets bi-LED projector headlights, LED daytime running lights, LED turn indicators, a glass-covered front badge for the Toyota Safety Sense system, 18-inch dual-tone wheels with Michelin Primacy 4 tires, and a much nicer set of LED combination taillights. It's still not the best looking crossover in town, but all these added features really do elevate the look of the car. I think it makes it seem a little bit more premium. Shame about the looks though, because we really can't do anything about it. The recently launched Corolla Cross Hybrid in Japan had a different face with a slightly different light, and that one looks really nice. There's also the GR Sport variant that was just launched in Taiwan, but we'll have to deal with this lah, at least until the facelift comes around. I wish they would have thought of a different way to put this Corolla Cross naming at the back instead of cramming it all here into this piece of plastic. Kind of seems like a bit of an afterthought, but I guess it is what it is. Before we check out the interior, I gotta point out a few standard features on the outside that is available both on this car and the 1.8G, and that is the powered tailgate with the kick function underneath, so that's really handy. And there is also a 360-degree surround view camera system that is standard, so very nice. Once again, inside we'll go over the things that I really like, starting with seating position. I think a lot of people are going to love how easy it is to get in and out of the car, and it's especially beneficial if you're caring for somebody or you're always driving someone with a limited range of mobility. It's not too tall like the Mazda CX-5, the Proton X70, or even the Honda CR-V, and it's not too low like hatchback, so it's just nice at the perfect ride height for a lot of maybe even elderly people to very easily get in and out of the car. The door apertures are pretty big too. I really like that the bulk of things here feel pretty solid for the most part, and that Toyota actually bothered to give us auto up-down function for all 4 windows. I mean, that's something Honda should be taking note of. But yeah, I digress. The steering wheel is also very nice. The leather work is nice, the contours are good. The rim may be a bit too small or thin for my liking, but otherwise the wheel itself is almost identical in design to the one found in the Toyota Harrier, even right down to the buttons, which feel really nice and premium. It's a very good wheel. The only difference between this and the Harrier is that the center boss feels a little bit more cheap and the bottom spoke design is different, but otherwise it's the same thing. Now, I recall having commented something about the hard plastics used on the dashboard and said that it wasn't done in good taste. While I would still prefer the dash material to be made of the soft touch plastic such as this and on the door, I understand the need for this, or the actual use for it here, because it's more resistant to UV and heat damage over say 10 years, so you won't get like a melty dashboard like some Continental cars. Beyond that, the interior differences between the 1.8G and 1.8V are much less noticeable compared to what's different on the outside, of course. So there are additional buttons here for the advanced driver assist systems, and the menu is also, well, it has a little bit more menu in the multi-info display. There's not a lot of colors here except for black, and it envelops the entire cabin from the floor all the way to the roof lining. There is no electrochromic rearview mirror, there's no LED map lights, there is also no contrast stitching here on the steering wheel, although you do get a little bit on the seats. And there is, however, LED ambient lighting in blue, right under the doors, but it's very faint and you can only see it at night. Now for the not so nice things. The 9-inch display that we have here is actually a very responsive unit with a questionable user interface layout. But what I really don't like is the low resolution 360 degree surround view camera feed. Let me show you. So once I put it into reverse, this view alone is okay. But when this view pops up, it has this image of the car in the middle, and that looks super weird to me. And it's almost useless to me because this is a very weird bird's eye view for me. I almost never use it. I only use it for reverse camera, which says a lot about the system. But otherwise, yeah, before this, I also mentioned that the car color is only in red, but I was wrong. Turns out you can change the color based on the 5 available colors here. So blue, gray, white, red, and what's the other one? Silver. Yeah. But you know what's the worst part about this? When this thing comes on, this display feed comes on, there is no way for you to press back. There is no dedicated button here on the screen for you to press back. There's one here on the steering wheel, but that is for the multi-info display. So you are stuck here unless you press the home button, which if you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto connected, brings you back to this UI. So it's like, it's a bit of a frustration for me, I gotta say. Like I mentioned, there is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but unfortunately there is only one way for you to connect it, and that is via this USB port right here. And when you have your phone plugged in, it kind of looks a bit ridiculous lah. I mean, it looks a bit silly, doesn't it? In other markets, the USB port is actually down here where this piece of useless plastic actually sits. And there are additional HVAC buttons here for seat ventilation and whatnot. But over here in Malaysia, it's just a blank piece of plastic that eats up space, and this optional wireless charger adds a little bit more uselessness to this whole space. So I really don't get what is going on here. They could have removed this plastic, but they didn't. And when you have this USB dangling on the screen, it takes away the level of premium that you've experienced with this car. In my opinion, I think Honda does this whole thing better. It's more integrated, and the center console doesn't have as much space as a Honda would. So you only get like twin cubbies here, some useless space here, and center armrest that's with a sliding top. And if you're looking for a 12-volt socket, there's only one, and it is right here. One more thing that's not up to my liking is the 6-speaker sound system. I find the audio imaging or the stereo qualities to be a little bit underwhelming, and there is only so much the custom equalizer that we have here, which is pretty impressive. There's only so much it can do because the speaker system doesn't sound very inspiring, I would say. It's okay, but nothing too great. So yeah. I gotta say though, the seats are really comfortable. The cushion that they use, the padding is actually pretty dense, and it's really comfortable front and back. I do wish that they come with a little bit more thigh support, but otherwise it's a real snug fit. Speaking of fit, you can fit 2 people here pretty comfortably, or 3 will be a little bit snug lah. 3 adults, I mean. But beyond that, you do get twin air vents here in the middle, as well as twin USB-A, both rated at 2.1 amps down here. So that is really nice. But what's even better is that you get 4 cubbies. 2 here in the center armrest, which hangs unfortunately and not rested on the bench, and 1 on each side of the door. So you can fit like your coffee cup or whatever really, really nicely. So I really like what Toyota has done here. What they could improve is maybe put a little bit more compartment here. This is a bit tight and small. Honda does it better. So you can also have another one here. I mean, just food for thought for the next iteration or the facelift or the next update. One more comment I've got to make is Toyota makes it a point to highlight this 6-degree inclination thing, but it's only ever functional or comfortable in one spot, which is fully reclined. Here, I feel okay, it's handy for when you want to squeeze in some furniture, but realistically speaking, it's not the most ideal seating configuration, so it's a bit gimmicky. This is better. Speaking of which, the boot space is rated at 440 liters, which is class leading. that is only slightly bigger than the Honda HR-V, and the HR-V also comes with magic seats, so that is definitely the more practical option if you're constantly moving stuff instead of humans. Otherwise, this is just going to be nice for a lot of people, and it's perfectly comfortable in my opinion. Oh, you can also fold the seats down in a 60-40 split configuration to create more space if you want to move like a fridge or a small washing machine, for that matter. Let's go for a drive. After driving this car for the past 4 days, I have really grown to like it. The car is just so easy to drive, it's so comfortable, quiet, refined, and the engine is actually great. It shares the same 2ZR-FE, a 1.8-litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine as the Corolla sedan, making about 139 PS and 172 Nm of torque. A CVT is standard, and it sends drive to the front wheels only, so there's no all-wheel drive here. The CVT also has 7 virtual ratios, and I think it really does a good job at mimicking the gear shifts of an actual torque converter automatic. At lower speeds, the engine feels quite eager and responsive, so it's a little bit like a Myvi, but a little bit more restrained lah. It's a good thing because it makes the car feel easier to get off the line, so that makes city driving a little bit more manageable, I would say. And the engine is quiet for the most part. I don't think it's underpowered, it's more like adequately powered, and it gets up to speed at a pretty decent pace as well. The CVT is manufactured by Aisin, which is another company that makes some of the best gearboxes in the world. Well, it should, because it's a Fortune Global 500 company and it's actually part of the Toyota group of companies, so they have a symbiotic thing going on. It's one thing to make a gearbox and another altogether to make this marriage with the engine work. To that effect, I think they complement each other very well, and I'm very happy with the performance and efficiency that I am getting from the powertrain and this drivetrain combination. So I managed to do a bit of mixed driving over the past few days, some 200 kilometers in the Klang Valley itself, so a good mix of urban, extra-urban and highway driving. And on average, I managed to get about 6.7 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers, and that translates to 15 kilometers per liter of fuel use. So that is pretty dang good in my opinion, considering that this car weighs about 1.4 tons. The fuel economy test was carried out with BH Petrol Infinity, the fully imported premium petrol with maximum German additives to give you more power, more mileage, and more savings. Now, after driving a few Honda models with Earth Dreams CVT, I realized that this Aisin-made gearbox is actually quieter and the drone is not as loud at full pelt. Let me just... The Honda would be significantly louder than this, so that was a pleasant surprise. There are no pedal shifters, but there is a Tiptronic mode here, which basically locks onto the gear that you decide. There was one person in the previous video who commented that this function is actually very useful for going downhill, and yes, I absolutely agree with you, and it's not just useful for overtaking. So there are many use cases where this function is very functional, and it's good to have. So again, it does a very good job at mimicking a torque converter automatic. Refinement is also surprisingly good here, and I attribute that mostly to the Michelin Privacy 4 tires. There is a little bit of tire raw, but not much else in terms of wind noise or engine noise. Again, the engine is very quiet, and this tires is actually quieter than what you get with the 1.8G, which rides on Bridgestone Alenza tires. So again, another pleasant surprise, but sort of expected, right? The steering wheel is light and makes the car feel very easy to maneuver. And when you're driving at speed, there is a bit of dead play in the middle of the wheel, so it's not going to be very twitchy, especially when you're cruising for long hours on the highway. But that being said, it's actually quite a competent car around the corners, and it's very poised as well. If you're not driving over pockmarked surfaces or crashing over potholes, then you won't be able to tell that this guy rides on a rear torsion beam suspension. Sometimes the ride can be a bit stiff on the rebounds, but it's nowhere near as pronounced or obvious as what you would get with the Honda HR-V. So I think Toyota did a very good job at sorting out the torsion beam suspension at the back, and the fact that it rides on the stellar TNGA platform is a win for buyers. As for the Toyota safety sense system, during my testing I found the adaptive cruise control and lane centering assist to work fairly well. When it does its own correction, it's not alarmingly intrusive, so it feels quite sophisticated in terms of execution. And when you have the system engaged, it's going to help you steer a little bit, but you're gonna have to keep your hands on the wheels at all times because it's not a full self-driving type of scenario. It's not quite level 2 semi-autonomous or semi-assisted driving for that matter because it doesn't have low speed follow. Yes, it has adaptive cruise control, but it only works up to a certain speed, so maybe it doesn't go below 40 kilometers per hour, but when it does work, it works pretty well. Otherwise, there's autonomous emergency braking, 7 airbags, tire pressure monitoring system, blind spot monitoring, and rear traffic cross alert. There's also 2 ISOFIX child seat anchoring points for the rear outer seats, so it's alright. I don't know what it is about the Corolla Cross, but I do constantly find myself looking for reasons to want to drive this car instead of the sedans that I have at home. I really don't know what it is. I just look forward to driving it all the time, but maybe because I'm getting older. But besides all that, I really do think that it's a great, comfortable car to drive. It may be 6 years too late to take on the HR-V, but it's no longer about fighting just Honda. There is a real place for the Corolla Cross in this market. Some people find the CR-V, the CX-5 and the X70 a bit too big and intimidating to drive around, and cars like the X50 or Subaru XV a touch too small for their liking. This is a solid middle ground in my opinion. The engine is responsive, it has a big boot, nice plush leather seats, a very refined cabin, and it's just at the right size and the right height. It's the little things that Toyota gets right, and I really do think that it is an easy car to recommend. Really get the 1.8V over the 1.8G because I think the small premium is well worth it. And as for the hybrid, let's save that for another day. That's been it for this review of the Corolla Cross 1.8V. Let us know what you think of the car in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye. This review is brought to you by BH Petrol Infinity, the premium fuel that gives you more power and more mileage.